Hi, I'm Beth. Welcome to today's yoga practice. This practice is going to be a morning Yin Yoga practice. It's the first of 3 that I'm going to film, Yin Yoga for morning, noon, and night. Let's get right into it. You'll see that I have some props. Props can help customize Yin to you. Yin is a very customized practice. You don't need these props. I'll explain alternatives as we go along. So this is a practice that you can do right in your bed. If so, grab some of the bolsters from your bed, some of the pillows, the cushions. You may not need them. Our first pose is going to be a wide leg child's pose, and I like a little support in the morning when I'm first getting going. So we're going to turn to our prop setup, and you'll see I have the bolsters angled toward me. They can also be flat. You can have a bunch of pillows stacked up. My toes are touching, and then I'm going to spread my knees far apart, or as far apart as is comfortable, to get a little bit of stretch along my hips. And I'll lean forward, allowing the bolster setup or the pillow setup to support my torso. Now I'm going to take my glasses off to show you. I recommend that you don't have glasses on either. Come down, allow the pillows to support you, and turn your head in one direction. Now, if you put your head in one direction, turn it the other, I'll cue you when we're about halfway through this practice. So you want to begin to settle in. Rest your arms wherever comfortable, and you can move around a little bit to start to find that place that's kind of your Goldilocks point, your place of stretch. We're really looking to kind of stretch the muscles in the back as we forward fold, but not too much. First of all, we're just starting out this practice. And second of all, Yin searches for that Goldilocks point, that place between a really intense stretch and no stretch at all, or no stress or sensation. We're looking for stimulation for the muscles of the back. Again, really gentle to start. Once you find that place for you, arranging the props however you need to, or no props if that's better, start to go quiet in your pose. Go inside. Let your body be as still as possible. So you'll notice in this practice, and in fact in all 3 practices in this series, that Yin is a quiet practice. It's a slow practice. We move slowly through each pose. We won't have a lot of poses in each of these 3 practices. We allow our body time to really sink in, and it's the time in the poses that fosters the stretch. That's why we're not going to our maximum or anywhere near it, maybe about 60%. It's not going as deep as we can. It's going to a point just where we start to feel something, and then allowing ourselves to settle in for several minutes. You'll see me glancing over in this direction because that's where my clock is. So we've been on this side, or this side of the neck, for about 2 minutes. If your neck is turned to one side, and you can have it this way as well, if that's comfortable to you. If you're ready, turn your neck to the other side. I'm going to stay looking toward you. Now you could also choose to keep your neck in the same direction if for whatever reason maybe you just need more of a stretch on one side of your neck today. And that's part of customizing the practice to you. Now, if you need to move or adjust as you stay for a while, certainly if anything feels numb, maybe in your toes, you can put a blanket under your bottom if you need to. So you can use other props that I'm not even using today. That's fine. If anything starts to feel numb, move it so that it's comfortable, and then settle back into your quiet position. So we absolutely can move to adjust if something starts to veer off into a place where we can no longer hold the pose. And then we want to settle back into the posture. So Yin poses, depending on the pose, as I said, we hold them for time. It can be held anywhere from just a minute, depending on the intensity of the stimulation of the particular pose, So sometimes up to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even 15-20 minutes if you're doing a longer hold yin practice. In today's practice, we'll be mostly doing holds in the 3 to 5 minute range. So in the last moments of this pose, notice how you can feel the support under your torso. Maybe with each breath you feel the front body or the belly gently pressing against your supports. Let's take a last few breaths that way, feeling the breath as it enters your body, noticing the breath as it leaves your body. And then after your next exhale, gently use your hands to slowly start helping yourself out of the pose. When you've been in these postures for longer holds, you definitely want to move slowly as we come out. And if you have glasses, keep them off. In fact, you can do this whole thing on the bed if I didn't already say that. Luckily, we can use the same setup for our next pose, although again, you might find that you don't need props at all. In fact, I think I'll try taking away the one bolster. So this is going to be another supported pose. We'll turn around. Our back is going to come right up to the support. If you're using the support, you can be flat on your back or the bed for this. The soles of our feet are going to come together, and this is going to be a reclined butterfly pose. So we start to lean back, and I like the bolster to be, my hips to be, or my sit bones to be slightly away from the bolster, and the bolster to hit me somewhere just above my sacrum. And then lie back. I'll just slide my other bolster out of the way so I can lie back, let my hands come out to rest. Now this feels great for me, for my body. If having your knees open like this, it feels like too much on your inner thighs, you see I have the blocks behind me. You can grab one of the blocks or a blanket or another pillow and place those under your thighs for support. If the effect of gravity is feeling nice for you here, simply allow gravity to do its work. Your hands can also rest on the inside of your thighs, or you can rest them somewhere in your torso, maybe over your belly button, to draw your attention in toward your breath and feel your breath as it moves in and out. If you want to learn more about the practice of Yin Yoga, it is a unique practice in yoga, different from restorative poses or restorative practice. In restorative, we might be propped in the same way, but we're trying to prop ourselves up in restorative so that we don't feel any stretch. So if I was doing a restorative practice, I would definitely put something under my legs so I wasn't feeling any stretch. I was just feeling support in my body. In Yin, we're looking to stimulate some part of our connective tissue, not necessarily the larger muscles, but the tendons, the fascia, the smaller things that help our muscles do their jobs. And so in that case, I'm not using anything for support because I feel a stretch without that support. Now, if you want to read more or learn more than what I just told you, there are several good books out there. One of them that I used as a basis for developing some of these practices is Norman Blair's Yin Yoga book. And I highly recommend that. I'll link to it in the bottom. He calls several of the Yin Yoga postures the most important postures. There's 9 total postures that he says are the most important in Yin Yoga. I'm going to incorporate some of those into each of these 3 practices, morning, noon, and night, that I do. For this practice, child's pose, which we did first, was one of the 9. This pose, butterfly, is also one of the 9. And then we'll do one more too that is one of the 9. So obviously I'm talking to you, letting you know I'm still here. You, however, I hope are simply releasing your body into your prop, into the pose, drawing your attention to the sense of stimulation or stretch that you're getting from the particular pose, and feeling how your breath is nourishing you in the posture. Again, maybe putting both hands over your belly, or one hand over your heart, one over your belly, so that you can feel your breath go in and out. And we'll stay in this posture about 1 more minute. Feeling your breath. Anytime that you need to take yourself out of a posture before I cue it, you are welcome to do that. Yin encouraging us to listen to our bodies and what they're saying. So if it starts to veer from simply feeling sensation into something that's painful and feels sharp or harmful, yes, you definitely want to move. In this case, for example, you might straighten your legs out and take a little rest here before we move. We're going to slowly start to move to transition to our next posture. We'll come to sitting up first. So use your hands. Remember that we move slowly as we transition. Start to prop yourself up to a seated position. If your legs were not already out in front, give them a little shake out in front. So the next series that we're going to do is also part of Norman Blair's 9 most important yin postures. This is going to be saddle pose, but we're actually going to do half saddle. So half saddle is 1 leg instead of 2. I find it a little bit more accessible, and we're going to do a reclined version. So we're still going to use our prop setup. In fact, I'm going to draw this prop back, my other bolster. And this just because I don't have as much flexibility to go way down into my saddle. If you are more flexible than I am, you may not need this prop or any props at all. We're going to stay where we were with our back right up to the props. And then we're going to bend 1 leg at the knee. Now this is a crucial part of the pose, is to find the right placement for you, that you get a stretch along the front, stimulation along the front, which is your hip flexor area, without hurting your knee or hurting your foot. So I'm going to move my leg a little out to the side. My foot is gently faced toward the floor, and I already feel, even without leaning back, that I'm going to start to feel some stimulation there. And then you can always stay upright on your hands. If it's possible and doable for you, you can lean back. That'll increase the sense of stimulation and stretch you get in this area for most people. And then you can lean back and find this position. I'm going to glance at my clock because we'll hold this one only for about 1.5 minutes, not as long, basically because it's more intense and we're going to do both sides. Now I like having these extra props because I feel that right away in this area, even propped up high like this. Some of you might have much more room and might be able to lean back on your arms and come all the way down to the floor. That is just not accessible for me, but it doesn't matter. The point of yin is not getting to that point. It's finding a stretch in your body, and I'm feeling, that Goldilocks stretch here right now, right where I am. So I'll just relax into the stretch at this place. Remember to breathe. You don't have to make your breath be anything other than comfortable breath. So focus on that feeling of comfortable, natural breath. If you can't readily access your breath, if it's not comfortable, that could be a sign that the pose that you're in or the version of the pose that you're in is not serving you. So it could be a sign to shift to a different version of the pose. And not every yin yoga pose is for everyone. Sometimes it's a sign we need to do a whole different pose. All right, let's take about 3 more breaths here. And then as we transition, again, I'm going to slowly help myself up with my hands. And I'm even going to use my hands to help draw this leg back around. Give that leg a little shake out that we took on the first side or before going into that posture. And then we'll do it on the other side. Know that the other side may feel different. So I'm using my hand to help me get that leg back and place it to a place. It can be, the knee can be further out, it can be closer together, where I'm starting to feel just the first touches of that stimulation. And then I lie back, and that allows me to get right to the right amount of stimulation here, right in this front point for me. Now, one thing you don't want to feel is anything in your knee. The knee joint is a joint we actually don't want to stretch. That can perhaps lead to some outcome that we don't wish for our knee. So if there's anything that feels painful, you can move your leg further away. You can also take a block or a pillow under your knee so that your knee is propped up that way. You have to experiment sometimes a little bit in Yin Yoga. So you see this prop setup for me, you can try the exact same thing and it may not work for you at all. Know that that is completely okay. Hopefully it will lead you to exploration and discovery of what does work perfectly for you. That is the goal. The other thing that we're looking for in Yin, in addition to that Goldilocks sensation of the area we're trying to stimulate, the parts that don't need to work literally do not need to work. So if my arms aren't involved in the pose, I can just let them flop out of the way. My eyes can close, my shoulders can soften. All right, we have a few more breaths on this side. And then use your hands, give yourself a little boost. And help yourself up. Take your legs around front. Give them a little shake out once more. We'll turn back around toward our prop setup. Now for this next pose, or this next option for two poses, either Sphinx or Seal, you can do this with no props at all. I think for this, I'm going to try keeping just my cylindrical bolster, moving these others out of the way. Now, if you don't have a cylindrical bolster like this one, you can wrap a blanket into a roll, you can use a pillow, or you can use nothing. This is a pose you can easily use nothing, especially if you're only doing the first version, Sphinx. So Sphinx, this bolster is right under my rib cage. My elbows are coming down to the ground. I would suggest that this particular bolster is maybe even a little too thick for me in this pose because my forearms aren't really totally on the ground, but the advantage of that means I not have to bear a lot of weight on my arms. So you can try Sphinx to start. This is a back bend, and part of what we're doing in this morning practice is moving our spine around a little bit for the morning. Trying to wake up our spine in a really gentle way. And again, you can do this without the support. You can even be up on the support. That's going to be a more intense back bend. And then the other way to have a more intense back bend is to move from Sphinx with our forearms down into Seal pose. So for Seal pose, my hands slide in a little closer, my palms turn out, or my fingertips turn out, and I push in and lift myself. Now I'm only barely touching the bolster. I'm bearing more weight on my hands, and I can even slide my hands in a little more so that I bear even more weight on my hands. And here I don't have any weight support on the bolster. I'm touching it a little bit, but my weight isn't really supported there. So that's an option if you're ready to really try to start waking yourself up and you're ready for a more intensive stretch, then come right up, prop yourself up into Seal. If that's feeling like, hey, I'm in bed, I'm just not ready for that yet, perfectly fine to stay here in Sphinx. And you see you'll have a nice little ski slope to your back. You'll still be really stimulating your back. So let's try about 30 more seconds in this pose. Remember that we want to be able to access our breath. So if you have propped yourself up, as long as you're still comfortably breathing, then that's an okay pose for you. If it's getting ragged and uncomfortable, try to come out of it a little bit. Let's take one more breath. All right. And we'll push ourselves up. Turn around to you. I'm going to keep my bolster. So that Sphinx or seal, that was actually the last in the 3 that we did today. That was one of the 9 that Norman Blair recommends. This is just a simple seated twist that we're going to finish with today so we can turn our spine a little bit around. Now you can sit like I am on the bolster. It's kind of nice to be on the bolster because it allows my knees to come out and open, just sort of relax. You can place your right leg or your right shin in front of your left if you're mirroring me. Take a breath or 2 in so that you can sit up tall. And take a breath in, sit tall, and on your exhale, we're going to revolve around the thoracic spine, around the rib cage to your right. And your hands can just gently support you in this turn. Now you don't want to use your hands to yank yourself into the twist more, because that might bring you beyond what you're comfortable with or beyond that Goldilocks position for you this morning. Let's find a comfortable turn of your body, perhaps keeping your head right in front of your collarbones, right even across your chest, or perhaps allowing your head to turn further in the direction that you're turning. And of course, because there are no particular rules in Yin other than to explore the stretch and sensation for you, you can also turn your head the opposite direction and see how that feels. And we're doing this twist for about 2 minutes on each side. Settling into it as our last pose. I'm trying to keep this practice relatively short and also something that you can do lying in bed before you get up. If you want to lie flat in relaxation pose after we finish or stay seated in a seated meditation, I absolutely encourage either of those things. All right, let's take 3 more breaths in the twist on this side. And on your next breath, turn back around toward the front. Switch the cross of your legs. So if it was your left shin in front, now it's going to be your right. And you can be in a looser cross leg than I am. You can even go back to your butterfly if you prefer. The legs are just helping ground and anchor us in the posture here. All right, remember that we start with sitting upright, feeling our sits bones in the floor or the prop if you're using one. Take a breath in and then revolve around to your left. So as you find your position here, hands are just resting lightly. So my hand is not pulling me into the poses we sometimes do. We really haven't warmed up the body for that. In fact, Yin we actually do with muscles cold so we can try to get into those connective tissues. And then because we stay in the position for longer than we would in a usual Hatha yoga class, that is what helps bring us the benefits of Yin. Now remember, you may wish to keep your gaze straight ahead. You might wish to take your gaze opposite. Or you might take your gaze in the same direction that you're twisting. Whatever you choose, I encourage you to find a position that feels comfortable enough that you can hold for about another minute. All right, let's take a couple more breaths here. And we slowly start to unwind from this pose, moving back to front. And that's the end of today's practice. Remember, if you want to lie back down and do a rest pose, a shavasana, or stay here in a seated meditation for a little longer, you can absolutely do that. I will link to the other practices as I film them below, so you'll have your yin for morning, noon, or night. If you want to try some of my past practices, I'll put them right up here. Please give me a thumbs up, a like if you like this. It tells YouTube to recommend it to other people as well. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks so much for joining me today.